Welcome to the Let's Get Chemical podcast, a podcast made by chemical engineers for chemical engineers, and in which we talk with alumni and other guests who work in the world of chemical engineering about their experiences, their jobs, and other hot topics in the industry. My name is Frizo. I'm a 24-year-old chemical engineering student here at the UT, and the host for this episode. First of all, some public service announcements. Through Alembic promotional channels, we will try to announce the podcast beforehand, so you can send in questions if you want to. And if you want to be part of the podcast or you have a strong opinion, please let us know as well. As you might remember, last episode we talked with Thomas Brouwer, who's currently working at Host, or Pride actually. If you haven't listened already and you want to know more about Thomas and what he does for his work and about his life and the position where he's now, you can find that episode in YouTube, Spotify, and of course the Alembic website. For today's episode, we have a really hot topic, and with a very special guest, in my opinion, Sascha Kersten. Dear Sascha, could you maybe give a small introduction about who you are and what you do?
For sure. Thanks for having me here this evening already. My name is Sascha Kersten. I was not born here in this region. I come from Limburg, in the south of this country. I was born and raised there, then moved to Amsterdam to study chemical engineering. Then I started to work at ECN, which is the Dutch Energy Research Foundation. Worked on many topics: fuel cells, biomass gasification, coal gasification, even nuclear power. Already back then, which was in the mid-90s, I was interested in renewables, so a new way of dealing with energy. While at ECN, I did my PhD studies. So I actually never was a real PhD student. I was working at an institute and did my PhD when I was present over there. Later on, I transferred to Twente. I think this was in the range of 2002, 2003. And my first assignment here was to coordinate the biomass research. Back then, we did quite some research on biomass, biomass to energy, and also biomass to fuels. And later on, I got interested in research in general, and I was elected or asked to become a professor in chemical engineering. And that was in the year 2010. And since then, I'm working in the group SPT, as you might know. And this group is very broad. We are doing all kinds of research, very closely related to industry. We are chemical engineers from profession, and we work on items still: biomass to fuels, biomass to chemicals, CO2 capture, electrification of the chemical industry, separation technology, reactor engineering, and so on.
Okay. Then today we are already mentioned we're going to discuss a hot topic, and the hot topic is the cutting the ties. So basically, for those who are listening who don't know about what cutting the ties means, it's basically there's a movement going on right now where there's a lot of pressure on universities that universities should stop working together with the fossil industry and think about the research that they are doing with the fossil industry that is promoted by the fossil industry or actually invested by the fossil industry. And if we should continue doing that, or if we should, cut the ties with the fossil industry. Do you agree with this synopsis, this very short introduction about the topic? Any things I missed?
No, I don't think you missed things. I think we could add that this came up very quickly. I did not see this coming. Let's put it like that. I did not see this issue coming up 2 years ago. But now it's there. Indeed, there are groups, also university groups, that are advocating to cut all the ties with industry. Yeah.
Okay. We'll later on discuss also your opinion on it, but we'll try to get many angles on it and discuss what should be done. And for that to go there, to basically reach that goal, we first wanted to discuss what the future of the chemical industry is. So what is the future of the chemical industry in relation to sustainability?
That's, of course, a very big question. I think the future of chemical industry you should also see as the need for products, for materials, for fuels. The current society needs chemicals. Without chemicals, we would be naked over here, which would be a strange situation. we need the chemical industry to fulfill our needs of our current life. What most people do not realize is that most products are made in a factory, right? In a chemical factory, at least the ingredients for the products are made in a chemical factory. So I don't think that society in itself or society as a whole can do without this industry. Yeah? And then you also have to realize a few things, and one of them is that the population is still growing. Yeah? At the moment, we have 8 billion people on this globe. Well, the projections differ a bit, but let's say it's 9, 10 or 11 billion in the future, but let's say it's 10, it's a nice number. That's one thing. So just the amount of people that is increasing will increase the demand for products that we are making. And next to that, quite some of these 10 billion, let's say it's 3 to 4 billion people, will start to have a life, a way of living that requires more chemicals and more energy. So the amount of products that we are going to produce, or actually the amount of products that are needed, will only increase. Yeah, maybe an example, the plastic industry. Yeah? At the moment, a round number would be that we are producing 400 million tons of plastics per year. In 2023. The general projection is that this will grow again, rounded off to 1 billion tons per year at the end of the century. So if you talk about what will happen in the future with the industry, the chemical industry, this will only grow because we need more materials. That's for sure one direction it will go. Of course, the products that this chemical industry is producing will change. At the moment, a refinery produces gasoline and diesel from crude oil. We are electrifying the transportation. Some people drive an electric car, not many if you count, but that number will increase. So the projection is that in X years, let's say in 2060 or 2070, 50% of all the transport can be electric. Yeah? But there will still be a need for, let's say, liquid energy carriers, like we have now diesel and gasoline. Now, the question is where to make them from. The objective of the European Union, but also worldwide, is that we don't use fossil fuels anymore in 2050. Well, that means that these liquid transportation fuels have to be made from something else as compared to fossil fuels. What that can be, biomass or CO2. Yeah? So in general, there will be huge changes in the future, but I think that the industry in itself will only grow.
Okay, but if it grows, we will also come across quite a lot of challenges. Mm-hmm. What do you expect will be the biggest challenges that we will come across in the future? Let's say between now and 2050.
Okay, yep. Well, we can address a few because there are many, but I will, for instance, start with the recycling of plastic. These challenges will be at many levels. At first, if we talk about plastic recycling, we have to collect these plastics. That's not easy at all. So collecting plastics is something that we have to consider. That's not the job of the chemical engineer, but that is part of the whole chain. So all these new structures will be part of a completely new chain. In plastic recycling, it all starts with the collection of plastics. Then we have to sort out the plastics. Then we have to clean the plastics. And then we come in, potentially, as chemical engineers, we have to develop technology to recycle these plastics. What can that be? We can have traditional means of pyrolysis and gasification, but then we have to adapt these to the plastics as feedstock. Next, we have to find a way to produce a plastic again from the product made by gasification or pyrolysis. Now, these are all challenges at the level of chemical engineering. It's about process development, but it's also about doing research on what kind of developments have to be taken place. For instance, one of the big issues in this recycling chain is that all plastics are contaminated. most plastics contain chlorine. We cannot put chlorine in the feed to a chemical facility because then catalysts will die, for instance. So there comes in the challenge to the chemical engineer to make sure that we will develop the technologies to enable these recycling chains. So that's a big challenge in itself.
Okay. Then are there current technologies that are being developed within SPT, let's say, that you think have a potential to that are a potential solution for the sustainable industry to make the chemical industry more sustainable?
Yeah, I think there are many potential good technologies being investigated also in our group. What you see that nowadays there has been a shakedown. With a shakedown, I mean once we started with biomass, or when we started with biomass, we investigated everything, right? Because you have many options for the future. And then after 10 years, you can set a few of these technologies aside because probably they will be okay with respect to the technology itself, but in an economics way or in an environmental way, they don't make that much sense. So that is maybe a first answer to your question. Many technologies will, be part of the future, and some of them we already left behind. That's one general remark. Now, in the field of biomass, we started off with in the 90s, and then actually not only me, but the most policymakers thought that biomass would be a good fuel for power, heat and power. So this is mid-90s, and then we said biomass goes to heat and power. Yeah. Well, later on, we abandoned that idea, not only we, but let's say based on the input of policymakers, because then you have to import biomass, we have to burn the biomass or gasify the biomass, we have to transport large amounts of biomass to the Netherlands and then combust them here or gasify them here in our power plants. That idea was abandoned. Then we came up that maybe biomass can be used in refineries, standard refineries as we have now. Instead of crude oil as a feedstock, some liquid biomass could be fed, and then we can make a transportation fuel out of biomass. I still think that's a feasible option, short term, because these refineries are there. We can liquefy biomass, so having the biomass as a liquid feed and then feeding it into a refinery could be a good option also for the coming decades. My current thinking is that if you use biomass, then you should make use of the atomic structure of the biomass in relation to the products. Meaning, biomass contains oxygen. So why not make molecules containing oxygen from biomass? Instead of taking, let's say, crude oil, which contains no oxygen, and oxidize the molecule to make a product from it. So at the moment, most of the research is focusing on making chemicals from biomass. Next to that, you can also make materials, of course, from biomass.
Okay. Then I think we can actually go more towards the next topic of where will the future of the chemical industry be located? Will it still be in Europe, or do you think that it might shift towards Asia or the United States? Where do you think the chemical industry will be located in the future?
That's a good question. I could answer that also based on current trends. If you look at the developments globally, you already see that most new factories are not being built in Europe. So there is an outflux, or let's say there is the new factories are being built outside of Europe, at least the majority of them. Then the answer would be indeed that quite some of the industry will move away from Europe. That is also not so strange, I would say, also because the market is not that much in Europe anymore. If you look, for instance, again at plastics, we are producing 400 million tons per year. I think 15% of that amount is being consumed in Europe. If you then also take into account that, let's say, the growth in population will be outside of Europe, then it is logical that China is building more chemical factories than we are doing, right? You do see that some special, some niches are being built in Europe. It seems that the Rotterdam area is becoming a biofuel stronghold, with companies as Shell and Neste and UPM talking about biofuels in that region. So we will have new factories, new chemical plants in Europe, but the majority of the new ones will, I think, be built outside Europe. Is that a good direction? I would say no, because also, I think quite some of the national income is associated to the chemical industry. So my plea is always that let's make sure that we keep a part of this industry in the Netherlands or in Europe, and make sure that we transform this industry to a much more sustainable way of operation. But keep the industry here, develop technology here, develop technology that is sustainable, renewable here, and lead the rest of the world actually in this direction.
Okay, something that I just thought of, but what if it would be completely up to you? How would you make sure that the chemical industry would stay here? What would you do if it was completely up to you? Like you had 100% of the decision making, The Hague would listen to you. What would you do to make sure that the chemical industry would stay in the Netherlands and become more sustainable?
Would be nice, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, I for sure would have what you would call an industry policy, so that we also think about this at national level, how to keep this industry in this country. That would mean, let's say, in the first years, making as much as possible use of the existing infrastructure. I don't think it makes much sense to, let's say, to abandon now the refineries and the chemical complexes and build something completely new. Make use of it, but while doing this, start working on new technologies, new big chemical facilities in this country. This country has very big assets in the harbor of Rotterdam. So this harbor makes sure that at the moment we have refineries there of almost all the oil majors, meaning that the combination of this harbor, through which we can import all kinds of feedstock, in the past oil, maybe in the future biomass or liquefied biomass or recycled plastics. We could even have a CO2 pipeline coming on shore over there. And what makes sure that we keep on, let's say, making use of this harbor, together with our tradition of being very good at chemical engineering, and like I said, lead the way for the rest of the world to make this whole field more sustainable.
Okay. Then we now come to the big topic that maybe many listeners will be joining us for, and that is the cutting the ties part, and with focus on what role the universities play regarding this topic. So what role do you think that the universities play in finding a solution for these problems? Like not necessarily the cutting the ties, but what role do you think that universities play in finding sustainable solutions for the fossil industry, for the chemical industry?
Right. Yeah, I think the most important remark there to make is that we are educating you, students. University educates students, and students will work in this industry for, I don't know, 40 years or 50 years nowadays with the current pension age. No, so I think the most important job of a university is to educate students. And this education should be good at the level of the content. So the basic ideas, in our case, of chemical engineering. So yes, in the future, we will still have to teach you chemical reactor engineering and transport phenomena and so on. There is no way we can do without this. So we have to teach you the basics. And then we will also teach you about the current fossil industry, because we also have to be realistic. Some of you will work in that industry for years to come. But I hope that you're also noticing that in the curriculum and in the talks of professors, we are slowly bringing in all kinds of topics on, let's say, renewables, sustainable energy, and so on. So the most important job of a university, again, and I'm saying this very often, is to educate good chemical engineers, which have a good view of the industry and which can make up their own mind on how to design how they should design their future.
Okay. You mentioned that we also should be educated in the fossil industry, the knowledge behind there. That uh, should universities also collaborate with the current fossil industry? Would you say that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes. See, I wrote a newspaper article I think, 1 month ago, more or less,
Yep.
and in the NRC newspaper, and there we made a few arguments why we should do that. And if I have to summarize, then yeah, maybe the argument is as follows: this fossil industry, as they call it, they have the manpower, and they have the knowledge, and they have the means, so the financial means, to actually, well, to speed up this transition. Let's call it a transition. Why would university not work together with them? Because if we don't work together with them, I think this will only slow down this transition. And they should also realize that, well, the vast majority of all the research projects we are doing, with, for instance, Shell or being it Exxon or Dow, are on sustainable topics. So we are helping them to develop better, more renewable, more sustainable technology, and at the same time we are educating people.
Okay.
So I don't see any reason why to stop this.
Opposition is quite a hard word, but what you hear in the news quite a bit is that students want to stop universities working together with the fossil industry because of the greenwashing. They say that indeed chemical fossil companies invest in renewable energy, but still the majority of the policy making within the companies and the money they make comes from non-sustainable sources. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, see, greenwashing, I think, is a difficult term. Yeah, for sure there will be some greenwashing. But I think greenwashing is done also by universities that say we're going to stop this collaboration, that you could also call greenwashing. Yeah, I think there's no such thing as an ideal world. That's my view on this. So maybe it's a choice between a rock and a hard place in English. No, not really, actually. But the fastest way, and I'm repeating myself, the fastest way to get to a sustainable, circular, whatever you want to call it, future, I think, is by working together with these large industries, large fossil industries. Again, because they have the means, financial means, they have the manpower, and they have lots and lots of knowledge in their companies. If we don't do this, it only goes slower. Yeah, if you then want to add the argument of greenwashing, I'm fine. But if you don't do it, then you will only slow down. And, well, who benefits from that? To put it differently, I don't see by which other route, and that's also the challenge to what you just called, I think you called it the opposition, right? Or the other side or whatever. The challenge is then, how would we do this? Who should pay for this? Should the new economy be developed completely by small spin-off companies, by startup companies? I don't see the alternative.
No, I agree with that, actually. I do still think it's important to also discuss the opinion of the other side.
Oh, no, for sure. No, and I really do I try to make an effort to understand them. I think we should always, well, discuss. Yeah, see, for instance, I already do not understand, or really, the term fossil industry to me is very strange. I think that every industry is fossil because all industries use power and heat. Yeah, and yeah, if you take a look at the European energy mix, this is 80% or 75% fossil. So it's very strange to say, okay, there's a fossil industry and a non-fossil industry. I think at the moment, all industry is fossil. But then again, I challenge them to come up with a plan to reach what they call climate neutrality, or CO2, to go to CO2 neutral in 2050 without these big companies.
Okay. Something quite different, but still related to this. you also have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Do you think that universities should be involved with those goals, reaching those goals, thinking about how they should reach those goals?
Yeah. See, these goals are very general, right? I think because one of them is to no poverty is one of these goals. The other one is food availability, and so on. You cannot really disagree with these goals, and that makes them a bit less concrete for me. I don't think that these should be leading in the university. Yeah? What you see at the moment is that every university and every polytechnical university, applied university, and every high school feels the urge to make an effort to contribute to these UN SDGs. While I think, and I mentioned that before, that the main goal of university is to educate people. Yeah. And to create people that see many, that have experienced inputs from all kinds of directions, and they can make their own choice on what to do in their further career. Having said that, I have worked my whole career in renewables, sustainability, so I'm in favor of that. The only thing is I don't like that it has become a single direction. You have to include these UN goals in your research and education. Well, it's fine if you do, but you don't have to. To make it concrete, if there is a professor here at university that would decide and would find a very interesting scientific question in enhanced oil recovery, that should be possible. We should not say to such a researcher, well, you cannot do this because this is, not helping in one of the UN SDGs.
Okay. It's a really interesting take on it. It's a great, great thing to learn. Thanks. I read an article that was written in Het Parool about the Free University of Amsterdam, the VU.
Yeah.
And they will be cutting the ties, not with their current research, but they will be having a special committee that will judge new collaborations, and they will only work with companies that are actually working on achieving the climate goals as set by the Paris Agreement, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think about this? Do you agree with it? Do you think that the UT should also imply such a thing, or what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm now. I think it was not the VU, but the UvA that is doing this. But that doesn't matter. It's one of the Amsterdam universities. Yeah, I would say that is greenwashing in itself. Because how would you actually evaluate that? How will you ever determine if a company is, making an effort or how they contribute to the Paris goals? Yeah, that I wouldn't know how to do this. For instance, at the UvA, I now know that they have a committee that actually has to evaluate every proposal of a research proposal of a professor or a group of professors with the fossil industry and see if this is allowed, yes or no. Yeah, I don't think we should do that because that's always subjective. What will be the measure to determine when it's okay or not? Should you spend, 10% of your profit to renewables, 15%? Should it be 50%? Can you only work together with companies that do not use fossil resources at all, and which just said, they are hardly there? So it remains subjective. I would not know how to do this.
Okay. Would you then advise to maybe be really transparent with which companies you're working together? So let's say the university says we're not going to cut our ties, but every research that's being supported by Shell, because before we started recording, you said Shell made $40 billion profit, and they invested $4 billion of that into sustainable research.
Yeah, no.
Well,
that would be nice research. No.
Sorry.
Into sustainable, let's say, investments.
Yeah. Sustainable investments. Would you then say, like, on the university, every research that's being done should have like a label if it's being supported by Shell, for example? Would you say that the university should be really transparent in saying this research is supported by I will still use the term fossil industry company by lack of a better word, or not?
Yeah, why not? But I think that's already being done. So if we publish a paper in my group, so I can only speak for my group, and Shell is the sponsor, then it's just written in that paper, somewhere at the back, I should also mention that the research is sponsored by Shell. I have no objection at all to make a public list and say, okay, we have these projects, and these are sponsored by Exxon, by Dow, by Shell, and whatsoever. Yeah, see, like I just said, most, and in my group, I think it's 100%. All of this research we are doing together with this, what you still call fossil industry, is on sustainable topics. Yeah, and mind you, we are also working together very often with experts from Shell in these projects. So we are completely open in this. There are no secrets at all. There is no hidden agenda. It's also not the case that, for instance, Shell has a too big of a say in the research. So it's always Shell that sponsors a research project, and then there's a university professor that executes the research. And the professor is, of course, in charge of what will be done. They cannot hold back any research results. So, they cannot say, we do not like this outcome because it's against our interests, so we will forbid you to publish this. This, at least to me, never happened. Transparency, no problem at all.
Okay, that's actually really good that you also mentioned that, because that was something I didn't know, and I know that some students at the UT also think that there's like a hidden agenda. But I think it's a really good thing that you also mentioned that such a company doesn't have influence on research like that. We do also have some questions from listeners, actually.
Sure. Oh.
And the first one, Tim has a question, and he asks, how do you think the executive board of the UT should handle the cutting the ties situation? And what action do you think they will take? So let's separate it into two questions, actually. Focus on the first one. So how do you think the executive board should handle this issue?
Good question, Tim. Yeah, I think that the board has to take a position, and they should, communicate this position. And that's something that they did not do until now, at least not that I heard of. So the first thing I think they should do, they should say, okay, this is the position of the University of Twente. We are a bit slow in that respect, like you just said in this Trouw paper. The VU already mentioned something. I know that Utrecht also made a statement. Eindhoven already made a statement, and so on. So the first thing that I would advise the board is to announce what is the statement of the University of Twente. And I would advise them, but that's not strange, and knowing my own opinion, that they would say we will remain collaborations with this industry, just because the reasons I just said. It will only increase the transition towards a sustainable future. Well, what do I think that they will do? Having heard the first announcements internally, I will think that they will go along with my advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting to know. Then the last question we actually have is, can we limit research that does not support sustainable future? And how would this impact the funding from companies for research groups such as SPT?
Yeah, can we limit? Yeah, of course we can. I think some universities will take that step, like you also said yourselves. Should we limit it? I think no. But if we do, then, like I also said, this will have a very small effect of the current research volume, as most of the research is done in the sustainability domain. See, the knowledge about the current processes, let's call them the fossil processes, is within the companies. So they don't really need us for their current operations. They want to see what we are doing. They want to see what new ideas we are having for the future. And, most companies are on a path that they want to go along with the goals of the Paris Agreement or whatever, maybe in a different pace. But eventually, most of them are investing and are, going towards a renewable, sustainable future.
Okay. We actually already reached the end of the podcast. I first want to ask you: is there still anything you would like to share regarding this topic, or regarding everything we discussed? Do you still think like this is has gone unmentioned?
No, don't think so.
Okay.
Nice talk.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, for having this, in my opinion, great discussion regarding cutting the ties, regarding all the sustainable industry, the fossil industry as well. So thank you very much for being our guest today. We'll promote the episode through our networks, and it will be uploaded on the Alembic website, YouTube, and Spotify if you want to listen to it.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.